Let's take you live to Canberra. The Shadow Treasurer, Angus Taylor, responding to the release of MYEFO.
Of household recession, where GDP per capita has gone backwards. We have never seen that before in this country. We haven't seen it before. 7 consecutive quarters of GDP per capita going backwards. We've seen household standard of living, Australian standard of living, collapse. Again, completely unprecedented. We've never seen a collapse like this, and it's the worst of any of our peer countries across the OECD. Australians are paying a price for a government that simply has had the wrong priorities and has consistently made the wrong decisions when we're facing a cost of living crisis and we're facing an economy that has been grinding to a halt. Now, we've just heard from the Treasurer an hour of Orwellian spin. We've heard almost an hour of Orwellian spin from this Treasurer. He has a slogan for everything, but a plan for nothing. And worst of all, the only thing this Treasurer does more than spin is spend. The only thing this Treasurer does more than spin is spend. Australians cannot afford another 3 years of Labor. Happy to take questions. Groups.
On the spending issue, where do you see the wins to be made there? If,
well,
as you pointed out, Australians pay for it one way or the other. How do you address that? Where are the wins to be made?
Yeah, and can I just pick up on that last point? I mean, what's been so remarkable about recent years all around the world is that we're paying for it much more immediately than we might have in the past because it drives inflation. It drives higher interest rates. It drives a lower standard of living. And that's why spending restraint is so important. And it's restraint in the growth of spending. It's not austerity, but it is restraint in the growth of spending that matters so much. And Jacob, that's why, as you know, we've opposed over $110 billion of spending in this term of Parliament so far. I suspect there'll be more. And some have liked to criticise us for this, but we've said all the way along the number one issue facing Australia right now is to sustainably beat this cost of living crisis, which is bearing down on every Australian household, every Australian business. Now, measures that in different times you might consider to have merit are not measures that are appropriate when you're in the middle of a cost of living crisis, and that's why we've opposed some of those measures. Those measures have included wanting to grow the size of the bureaucracy here in Canberra. Those measures have included power lines that we don't think are appropriate and necessary if we get our energy policies right. They have included billions of dollars of spending for supposed housing where we aren't seeing new houses. In fact, Labor's given up the ghost on its housing targets. I mean, they simply aren't delivering. And at the end of the day, the problem for Labor is they have the wrong tools for the times. Their answer to everything is always spin and spend, spin and spend. The right answer now is on the supply side, is get the basics right. Get back to basics, get the country back on track. And that means initiatives like ours to make sure the infrastructure bottlenecks are beaten to get more housing into the marketplace, making sure that you've got the base load, low emissions, zero emissions energy that you need for this country to meet our emissions goals and ensure that Australians don't have to pay more than they have to. These supply side measures are the key. They are the way forward. Getting approvals through. I mean, Labor has had no focus on this. They've been blocking approvals for major projects in this country. If you don't get the supply side right, this is what you're left with, what we've seen today, which is an extraordinary situation. And it's not only a commentary on the failure of Labor over the last 3 years, it's a commentary on the failure of Labor over the next 3 years if they are to win government, particularly if it's a Labor Green government. Yeah, Shane.
This is the same question I put to your counterpart. You've got budget deficits of about $117 billion forecast over the forward 3 years, not including this year. Where does that leave tax reform? Can you go to the next election promising lower income tax on working Australians?
Well, we have promised already important initiatives and reforms on the tax side, as you know, Shane. An important one that I think should never be understated is to increase and make permanent accelerated depreciation for small businesses. And this is because one of the ways through the crisis that Labor's got us in right now, that they seem not focused on, is to encourage business investment. And we know small businesses are the backbone of our local economies right across this country, and we need them investing, and that's why that's such an important measure. Not imposing taxes on unrealised capital gains. You've seen the Treasurer just today confirm that he wants to tax unrealised capital gains. He's confirmed it. He's at it again. I mean, there's no amount of money that this Treasurer can get hold of that he doesn't. That means he doesn't want more. He just wants more every single time. Now the truth is that Labor has, as you know, spent all the money and more. That's what they've done. And so we'll look closely at these numbers and further initiatives. There's, of course, more honeypots that have been laid out today on top of what was already in the budget. That's going to be more spending from Labor, and we'll see what's in that. And from that, we'll work out what's possible as we go forward. But let me tell you how the most important thing you've got to do to deliver lower personal income taxes, Shane, because it's a good question. The most important thing you have to do is ensure that the economy grows faster than your spending. That is the key. Re-establishing those fiscal guardrails thrown out by Jim Chalmers in his first budget. Thrown out. They've been there since the Charter of Budget Honesty was put in place by Peter Costello in the 1990s. You throw them away, and this is what we get. And yes, when you do this, you don't leave headroom for personal income tax cuts. That's absolutely right. But of course, what we will do is re-establish those fiscal guardrails and then re-establish headroom to make sure that Australians aren't paying more tax and are able to get a fair go, to work hard and to do well out of working hard.